All right, and so we are here today to celebrate Dr. Ludington and her journey of research and all her contributions to neonates and to mothers and to nursing in general. So take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very pleased to have a chance to share with you what's happened in my 50 years of nursing. I got my very first nursing job on June 22nd, 1972. And was in the Merchant Marine Hospital. No, I didn't last long in the Merchant Marine Hospital. I went into OB. So, but I'm very pleased to have a chance to share with you. I was discussing this with the undergraduate research students, and I call it the real world of nursing research because they've been hearing all about nursing research. So I thought they'd like to know what can happen when you choose the avenue that you have all chosen, which is to become nurse scientists. So, let's do it. And to have it do it before. Okay. Okay. Well, we can go through over this. Let's just go to the next one, which was an overview of for them in particular, because they were focusing on research, evidence-based practice, and quality improvement. And I really wanted to emphasize that the evidence that we consider in the literature, which is for evidence-based practice, is predominantly from research studies. And so discovering what is new is what our job is as nurse scientists. But it doesn't stop there, because once you have the evidence, you really want it to get. And I know that we've all been taught that can take 11 years. I'd like to revise that. I think it takes 40 to 50 years.
Oh my God.
Because we started the Kangaroo Care research in 1970. And it is not by any means routine and practiced everywhere where it should be, even though we now have a mandate from the Joint Commission that started January 1st, 2019, that all healthy term newborns will be placed skin to skin on their mother's chest within 1 minute of birth and left there for at least 1 hour or until the first breastfeeding is complete, or up to 2 hours. And really the practice should continue for up to 3 to 6 months. But this is a very good first step. So that certainly isn't in evidence everywhere. And from 1970 to 1922, we're already over our 50-year limit. So you've got to really focus on implementation science to get the evidence into so that people can benefit from it. And I have found myself involved with quality improvement projects to make sure that new evidence does get out there. My last one was published in 2018, which was conducted here in the Cleveland area. The nurses to really monitor our newborn babies that were being placed on the mother's chest and make sure that they were not going to have a sudden unexpected postnatal collapse, which the CDC asked me to be on an invited board to set United States standards for sudden unexpected postnatal collapse, and which after all of my years in practice and doing research, I got invited to write the national guidelines for that, and they were published in 20 and 21. And we now have a big major CDC statement coming out in June of 22 for sudden unexpected postnatal collapse. So even though we're scientists as research PhDs, we still are involved in all of this if we really want our patients to benefit from what we're finding. Because our research really is an investigation that involves inquiries and studies and exploration of so many different environments and places that are different. For example, on the left are the pink porpoises that you'll meet in the Amazon River. And of course, we have climate control now, climate warming that is giving us very big extremes, such as what our polar bears have to live through. And we also are caring for people with varying levels of awareness. And in April 22nd, there is in the American Journal of Nursing a wonderful article that says, the title is Prevention Begins with Awareness. So when you're writing in your papers that this, your results may lead to guidelines, always remember to make the people aware. And that's a lot of education. And that's what we get to do as nurses. Physicians don't have the time for that. Their interest is taking care of cells. Our interest, at least when I went into nursing, I decided I didn't want to be taking care of cells. I wanted to take care of people. And I love educating people. So it really is a lot of exploration, study, inquiries, and asking questions so that we may end up solving them. The research process, which you all know, is a systematic process of inquiry, and then it produces evidence. The evidence may be good evidence, it may not be such good evidence. And doing our work, can also be problematic. I remember a study that we were doing with Kangaroo Care with very premature babies, and we wanted the parents to hold them in skin-to-skin contact for several days. But we ended up losing a lot of subjects after we had recruited them and started because they became hyperbilirubinemia. And after losing about 10 of these babies, I met with the head of neonatology in my research team, wonderful nurses, practitioners in the NICU who make sure the studies are safe and make sure the studies are able to be conducted safely and feasibly and without any harm for babies. And that's knowledge I don't have because I'm a researcher, not an NICU clinician. So we decided after 10, this was a significant problem. And how much money did we have if we were going to keep recruiting and losing people? I said, well, we continue until our money runs out. And my job as a researcher is the cash cow. I am a cash cow for the university, and I'm a cash cow for my own studies. And I have people who need their jobs doing research, and we need to get some more money because we've encountered a problem. Take that problem and turn it into another research grant. Because the first thing I did, once I had identified that we have this problem of hyperbilirubinemia, I wrote it up as a grant proposal. And I stay very involved in my national Association of Women's Health and Neonatal Nurses, National Association of Neonatal Nurses, the Academy of Neonatal Nurses, and others in child development and psychology, so that I can tap into them for foundation or association funds to get a study going, get my pilot data, and if it yields something of interest or an answer to the solution, then I can go for definitive size sampling and studies in the full power analysis size done, and get a federal or other extramural grant that'll enable you to have a definitive study done. So we then did a study that was published in 1996 after we discovered the problem in 1994. That was Kangaroo Care's effects on hyperbilirubinemia. And so instead of losing our babies and keeping them in an incubator under the lights, I said, okay, well, we'll have one group and we'll call that our control group, that's standard care. And we'll put the other ones in skin to skin. But because we want them to have a duration of skin to skin contact, not just coincidence, we put a billy blanket on them across the baby's back. And so we kept the baby under the billy blanket. So we had a group that had its standard routine, billy lights, and then the others that had the billy blanket with Kangaroo Care. And lo and behold, we found that resolution of hyperbilirubinemia was faster during Kangaroo Care, probably because of the baby's warming on the mother's chest. As soon as you get a baby on its mother's chest, her breasts will heat up and keep heating up until the baby hits 37.5. term baby or preterm baby. You know why it stops there? It stops there because if the baby gets to 37.6, they start having apnea. But our breasts are so great, they're so knowledgeable, they're so sensitive that when the baby gets to 37.5, you will see the maternal breast temperature. We published this in 2000 with 320 mothers that we see. It plateaus, and it plateaus for about 1 to 3 minutes, and then it drops 1 to 2 degrees centigrade in 1 minute to prevent the baby from getting too hot. But what happens when we have our daddies? Oh, of course I want daddies to do things there. So we started to do daddies. Would anybody let a daddy in the United States do this? No way. No, can't do that. So when I was going down to South America, after having been invited down there once and twice and doing studies down there, I just said I would come down, but I had to do paternal kangaroo care. Oh, they were very upset because down in Colombia, fathers are not allowed into maternity hospitals. In fact, many places, nobody is, just a woman. And if you want to inquire about her, you go to a little window on the street and they'll tell you how you're doing, but you're not allowed in the hospital. And here I come down and I'm saying, I want to study daddy. And they said, oh, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, then I won't be able to come and give the talk you want me to. So we disconnected. 2 days later, they give me a call and they say, don't you know we already printed this invitation? So what do we have to do to get you here for this talk? And this was down in Cali, Colombia. I'm now in the tropical area. I said, I want to study daddies. You have to give me permission to have the father of the baby come in with a mother so he can do kangaroo care at birth, etc. I said, oh, Dr. I said, I promise you, we'll escort them, we'll meet them, we, won't expose them to anybody else, just their home partner and their newborn, so nobody else gets an idea that they're around. And by this time, the nurses, when we had gone down to this hospital 3 times for research studies, they had given us their whole lounge area as our research room. And they helped us turn it over into a research room. And we're delighted because every time I went down, the first trip, what did they really want? Stethoscopes. Oh my God, that was so valuable to them to have their own stethoscope. Second time I realized when we had a patient who couldn't get their blood pressure taken, it's because they didn't have sphygmomanometers. So I took down rolling sphygmomanometers, got it passed. I'm getting to be known at, immigration. Oh, she's the one who brings all that equipment from Houstonville. Like, we leave it here, pulse oximeters, etc. and sphygmomanometers, etc. So they set up a room and I said, well, keep the daddies in that room. I promise you no one will see it. So we were the first to do a study that we published in 1994 in the Journal of Developmental Psychology about thermal control and interaction with premature newborns when daddies did kangaroo care. And guess what we found? Their breasts don't respond at all to the baby's temperature. They will start heating up and they keep heating up, but they do not thermoregulate. So when Kangaroo Care was added to the newborn resuscitation program, which they added it in 2012, they said use skin-to-skin contact for thermoregulation because all of my studies had shown that, yes, it thermoregulates. It'll drop down to prevent the babies from getting too full. And then we did a study at Rainbow where we had twins and one twin was warm and this mother's temperature in her breast went down and the baby on the left side was cold and her temperature in her breast just kept on rising. And then when one of the babies had to be taken away, that breast went crazy. Its temperature was going up and down, desperately looking for his baby to regulate the temperature until my baby on breast A put his hand over onto breast B. Oh, then it was happy and it leveled out and it decided it needed to warm up the hand that was on breast B and was doing A-okay until baby A took his hand back again. So Our breasts have sensitivity, men's breasts don't. But even though they drove the babies above 37.6, they drove them up to 38, and then I had to stop the study because that's really getting serious. And just as I'm about to start telling my daddies, because we wanted them to do 2 hours of Kangaroo Care, that I thought that was enough, the daddies started saying, oh, how long am I supposed to be doing this? And then another daddy said, you know, I have more to do today than sit here with this baby. And another daddy said, I think he'd really rather be with his mother. And I'm getting all of these wonderful signs of fanny fatigue. They've had it, and just at the right time, take them off, and the babies are safe in their temperature. So we put that into our publications in developmental psychology too. But we use the systematic process to really start getting the evidence for maternal and paternal kangaroo care. And now we're back in our, okay, let's see if I can go. All right, it's not advancing through my slide. Maybe we can advance to the slide 3. Is it not working? Try it here. See, now I have to have just a special touch on that. You better sit here.
Yeah.
Welcome to my house. I am not going to miss having to work with all. So this is a nurse tune about what research is and is not, as our nurses become aware of what we're trying to do with our projects, especially when we're in a university-based hospital like UH. So one nurse says, we need to use research to guide our patient care. And the floor nurse says, I do. Today, I performed inductive qualitative research on pain management using a convenience sample of an available RNs in the NICU. And her boss says, in other words, you went to Donna and asked her what to do. And she said, exactly, an N of 1. That's not research. Well, that's not research for us, but you know, for businesses, an N of 1 will do. If they hear that, for example, that, you know, that one company in Tokyo decided to have all of their employees do exercises and increase production, very soon all the other companies with making cars start having exercises. So an N of 1 works well for them, but it doesn't work well for us. We want, okay, I'm working on it. That's 3, your turn. Thank you. So you know the systematic process. It takes you through the problem and then it develops the idea for the study. You preparing good grants. Remember, some of them would take a lot of time. You've got to have your ducks in a row. And ducks in a row means that you have to have a very good basis for what justifying what you want to do. So that's a very good literature review and staying on top of it. And imagine how lucky we are. As scientists, we're paid to spend time learning the latest literature, to see what is available to us, what is new. And then we have to put it into a format that we can use either for testing. You know, one of our research types of studies was we're moving along after that into evaluation and application, and then the quality improvement to keep it moving. So the research process is always the same. And that's why we have the ability to replicate and to resolve conflicts. If one study finds that something goes up and another study finds something goes down, replication is needed. And then we have meta-analyses. And Cochrane meta-analyses are indisputable because it really takes your data and saying, this is what you will see in this group of subjects, or this group of subjects, or this group of subjects. Now, all similar groups of subjects who were not in the studies, this is what you can expect. And it's indisputable data. And so whenever I'm working with doctors, and yes, it still happens. I mean, even though Kangaroo Care originated across the street at Rainbow Bay Children's Hospital by Drs. Kennel and Klaus in 1970, it's still not used. And we're doing a study over there now, an experimental study. And the doctor comes in and she says, what are you doing with this baby? How could you have this baby prone on its mother's chest? Prone is a very bad position. I want this study stopped. And that's what she says to my project director who's working. And so you get hold of the PI. And the first thing you have to remember is take a deep breath. Okay? There are ways to solve problems rather than have crises. Okay? So I get over there. And another rule I've learned in my years of research, when you have a study, and I only did clinical studies, I did descriptive clinical studies, I did experimental RCTs, because that's the data we really need for implementation. I always am visiting the clinical site when we have a subject. Do not be a foreigner to your clinical site where you're collecting data. Be there, let the nurses know you're there, let your own people who are helping you with the study, let you know you're there. And because you're going to be needed for problems. So here, this physician was telling my project director, I want this study stopped right now. She texted me right away. Fortunately, I was able to get the text right away. And I said, Kathy, I want you to continue doing the data collection and tell the physician, thank you for expressing your concern. The PI is on her way over. And I got over there in 15 minutes because I'm in the HRC. And she said, I don't know why you're allowed to do this study. And I said, we're allowed to do this study because it went through the NICU research committee. It went through the Department of Pediatrics research committee. And then it went to IRB approval. And we have full approval. And this process that you see us practicing and taking data from is considered safe. Well, I don't consider it safe. And I said, yes, I understand there's a change in how we treat our babies now because we don't want an increase in sudden infant death syndrome. But at the time that this study was approved, which was 6 months ago, everything was still considered safe. However, I do appreciate your concern, and I think I have a solution. And she said, and what would that be if you're not going to stop this study? And I said, you're right, I don't want to stop this study. It's fully approved and it's safe, and I have a neonatal nurse practitioner who's practiced here at Rainbow for 32 years as my project director because she's sitting here minute by minute watching my subject to make sure they are safe throughout the study. And she's been doing that with me here for 18 years. So I don't want to stop the study, but I have a solution. She said, what is it? I said, we will put a sign on the baby's bed incubator that says, only for the purposes of the research study will the infant be placed prone. At all other times, he must be on his back. And she said, oh, well, if you put that up, then you're not really modeling it for the mother so that she thinks it's safe for her baby to be prone. And that will be safe. I agree that then you can go ahead. Thank you. We will get that signed and we'll have one up this afternoon and I'll have it for every baby throughout the study. We do that study still ongoing over there. We do each subject for 4 days from 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every day. 4 very nice, beautiful, state-of-the-art equipment, devices, collecting stuff about stress. So problems do come up. You need to be available, and then you can take it through the whole process. Next slide, please. Okay, the problem. And really, where do most of our problems come from? They come from clinical practice. The textbooks tell you 67%. I can tell you that from my research, they've all come from the clinical practice that I see of what Kangaroo Care and what Kangaroo Care isn't. For example, when we do Kangaroo Care, I'm there and I'm observing, and your mind as a scientist is very advantaged. We see things differently than the clinicians who have different priorities. But when I'm looking at the responses of these babies. And one thing I noticed in all the studies, from the very first one I started in the 1980s, was that the babies, when you get them on their mother's chest, skin to skin, fall asleep. Fall asleep. So I start to look into what is newborn sleep? How much sleep should they be getting? We all know we want babies to sleep so they can develop. So the brain will develop. Sleep is the window to the baby's brain's development, and they need sleep. But there are different types of sleep. There are 4 different types: Delta 1, Delta 2, Delta 3, and Delta 4. And you may just accumulate those into active and inactive sleep, drowsy or deep sleep. No, they're really 4 states. And each state has a particular role in the baby's brain development. And nobody had been doing any kind of research on any interventions with newborns, even breastfeeding. What type of sleep follows breastfeeding? What type of sleep follows being held? What types of sleep follows when mummies have babies out in strollers? Or when babies are sleeping in the family room amid all the activity versus in their bedroom. Sleep hadn't been done. So I said, okay, I'll do a sleep study. Because if we can show that Kangaroo Care improves the sleep for the baby's eventual brain development, that is a tremendous insight. And that's a very good impetus to get people to practice Kangaroo Care. It took 2 years to develop the process to get an EEG-based measurement on a preterm infant's skull. Had not really been done before. Had no baseline data of what was to be expected when they were in an incubator to know whether Kangaroo Care would make it. 2 years I spent working with the author of a sleep textbook who was with me at my previous site. And then we wrote the grant, and I learned from him tremendously. We went over to do lots of babies, tried different leads, different locations, different gels, different positions of the baby. And finally, we got data of what is the EEG readout, both from one feeding to the next, because that is like the whole focus of the baby's system. He doesn't have circadian rhythms per se, but he does have rhythms from one feeding to the next. So we did it from one feeding to the next. And we published that. So I now have the experience that says, this is the machinery we need. We have tried this machinery. We were able to get it. We had publishable results that were peer reviewed. So now we know what we can expect from the incubator period. So I can determine if Kangaroo Care is making any other difference. And once you put this all into your preliminary work section of your application, they can see what you have done. And if I've done a pilot, I put down the pilot and I say, what we learned from the pilot is, and I bullet it straight there and then so they easily see how this application is informed from everything we did in the pilot. And we received NIH funding for a randomized controlled trial for 123 babies. My power computation came out to it, and to do this study to determine what is EEG, what is the effect of Kangaroo Care on EEG sleep measures. Okay, and we started to do that study. I brought it with me when I came here 21 years ago and found a pediatric neurologist and the sleep people. I spent 4 months getting to know who was who around there, who was familiar with machines, because I had bought a very, very expensive polysomnograph. Oh yes, I ended up on, the unit that they have for sleep disorders for children, particularly those who have a lot of HIV, positive encephalopathy, because they have seizures and interrupt sleep, and that's where you'll find them. So got to know all of them, brought my machine with me, up with my study. All they were excited and we were able to do the very first study on EEG sleep of premature babies and the first study of Kangaroo Care effects. And the difference was so amazing. After we had finished 20 babies, 10 controls and 10 in our kangaroo group. And this is only 1 day of sleep. We're doing it for 2 periods or 2 interfeeding intervals, just 1 day. And the results were the difference was P equals 0.0001. There were 5 areas of the brain that were really changing. The sleep was so much better because the babies need a predominance of deep, quiet, regular sleep, not the active REM sleep that everybody sees these babies in. And what we had learned from our EEG of babies, preterms, and incubators is that out of any hour, they maybe get 10 seconds of deep, quiet sleep in an incubator. And in Kangaroo Care, it went on for 23
10
minutes.
seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. So we published this in pediatrics and pediatric research and Journal of Neurophysiology Pediatrics. We have 5 publications. Because we've got 21 to 23 minutes, consecutive minutes of deep quiet sleep. So I wrote to NIH and I said, well, we want to show you our preliminary data of what we found so far. And maybe you'll give us permission to not complete the study with a full 100 more babies. We have an idea to move into a randomized controlled trial of babies that had getting kangaroo care from hospitalization, not just one day. And the answer came back, no, we funded you for 123, you will do 123. So I said, oh, okay, that's the fully powered study. So we finished that, but I then took this idea and submitted it for a second grant. And I said, well, while we're doing the 1 day, that can be 1 day, and then we'll do the babies for 3 other days each week while they're hospitalized. So we actually completed 2 grants, and I got money for that. Okay, when we still have the other one going on. And we found that this time that the brain of the babies who had Kangaroo Care, there were 5 sensory areas that had matured so much faster than they were for other prematures who were not given Kangaroo Care. And not only that, but we did a comparison to the full-term babies, and we found that their brain maturation was 2 weeks ahead of the full-term babies. And we also found, I connected with Dr. Jen Lombardo in electronics and bioengineering over there. We did connectivity studies, and we published those as well. And we found that there were much better connectivity, much better relay systems that were going on, and the overall brain performance was 100% better than it was for any baby in an incubator. So the messages, and we publish all of this, and we publish it in the journals where it properly belongs, not always in the nursing journals, because sometimes the nursing journal says nurses don't want to know what happens to an EEG. They want to know what happens to the baby's sleep. So I can turn that into a more clinically oriented article, but my scientific data where I specify where our electrodes are and what is the symbol, and what equations are we using for looking at connectivity, etc. I have to leave in journals where that data will be appreciated. And so I'm thinking when I publish the article that's clinical, great, people will really pick up on this and they'll see that these babies in the intensive care unit need to be out of the incubator. And already in 1980, Sweden had started using Kangaroo Care as the baby's bed. And in 1982, we had a big meeting there, couldn't wait to go. And I walk into a room that's this size. This is the intensive care unit at Uppsala University Hospital in Sweden. And this is one of their intensive care rooms. And the door is here, and right in the middle is a round table for 1 nurse. And there are curtains that separate 4 beds. And each bed is a double bed for a mother and her partner. And I'm looking for the incubators. There are no incubators. And I'm in neonatal intensive care. Oh, there are incubators. They're up at the ceiling. Because the bed for the babies is the mother's chest. But when she wants to get up and go to the bathroom or go out and get food or take her breast milk down to the milk bank that's on the unit, make sure it's all ready for feeding, etc. She pushes a button and the incubator comes down and she gets up with her baby and she puts him in the incubator. She needs help with all of his IVs and lines. The nurse is there, she does that, and the curtains are open while she's gone, and the nurse watches that, and she comes back, they put her back onto the bed, and if her partner's there, he can have the baby too, and she has a TV, she has magazines, she has drinks right there, and then the incubator goes back to the school. And they've been doing this since 1980 in Sweden. It's called 24/7 Kangaroo Care. And lo and behold, their babies go home 2 to 4 weeks earlier than any comparable neonate cared for in the United States. So I get an idea. Let's do this. Let's do 24/7. Why not? Oh, no, there's no way we can do that. We don't have room. And in fact, in one of our major hospitals here in Cleveland area, not Cleveland Clinic, they still do not allow kangaroo care in the intensive care nursery because the head of the intensive care nursery, nursing, says there's no room for the mothers and they're too much trouble. And they still do not do it. And when I relate this to some other faculty on our school of nursing, one of them said to me, well, that's malpractice. And I said, I agree, I think that is. They're denying all the evidence for their convenience. But to this day, they still do not allow mothers to do kangaroo care in the neonatal intensive care unit. So when I got the idea that these babies were so calm, and I had been reading about how we have an opioid addiction that was creating lots of babies that were withdrawing. I said, we haven't done that yet. We haven't tested kangaroo care to handle addiction withdrawal. And for everything that exists, what the problems are. Oh, well, when the babies get neonatal abstinence syndrome, now called NOWS, neonatal opiate withdrawal, they get very high temperatures. And I said, no, not kangaroo care. We show them that mother's breast will put it down. They're very poor feeders. No, we showed that when mothers were doing it throughout the night, babies came over to the breast, they got their feeds and they gained weight much faster. They have 70% fewer infections because they get more immune function from the mother, not just from the breast milk, but she passes antibody-specific antigens from her skin to the baby. And that's one of the studies one of my doctoral students was finishing up here in the School of Nursing at one time. So she veered off because she found it difficult to do a full study over there, but she made a significant contribution. So everything that was on this list, oh, they're so agitated. No, babies on their mother's chest aren't agitated. You know this. You have a crying baby, whatever you do. You pick them up and they stop crying. You put them down. Oh, you can tell parents, they've got the baby sound asleep in the back of the car. So when they get home, they ever so carefully take the baby into the house and hope to God that they can lower him into the bed before he wakes up and realizes he's not being helped. Well, prematures are the same. It's fixed in their brain. They're hardwired to be kept with their parents. That's where safety is. So I said, no, you put them on their mother's chest, they fall asleep. Oh, no, not these babies. They cry all the time. My babies don't cry. And we'd already done research at another NIH grant to determine what is the response to a heel stick. What is the response to multiple heel sticks and injections? And yes, when they're in kangaroo care, because the oxytocin that's released in their brain goes to the pain and decreases pain perception, and 92% of the babies won't cry at all. So now I want them to be using it for the retinoic tests that we give all babies. That I know that would really help that, and I can figure out how to do that, but it's just too much for me to be doing it this time. But that's one thing that needs to be done. Pain is not an issue. Everything that was on this list, being irritable and moving about, no, they sit there, and I have pictures of a study that we did out of Elyria Medical Center where we started, which ended up resulting in this study, this mandate from the Joint Commission, where we put the babies right on the chest, right after birth, term babies, and then we documented their behaviors, their heart rate, their respiratory rate. And lo and behold, just like with premature babies, they start transitioning to extrauterine life so much better, so much sooner, and there's no crying. And the APGAR is no darn good because the baby has to be grimacing, has to be agitated to get a good APGAR score. But if he's in Kangaroo Care, he's looking around. And the APGAR score is, excuse my language, shit, less than desirable. And we published this in 2018. And as I'm reading this article, they're saying, we really think we shouldn't publish this content about the APGAR. I said, absolutely, I'm not taking it out. I want that in there because none of the nurses really do an APGAR correctly. They don't flick the bottom of the foot. They don't lift the hand and release it. They just give an overall estimate, the same as physicians do. I said, so they're not doing it accurately. And you can see from the behavioral state, and I have videos that show that this baby's just quietly looking around. And if mommy says anything like, hi, sweetie, they move to the sound of the voice, or daddy comes in and says, boo boo, they move to hear who said boo boo, and they're not agitated, they're not grimacing, and their heart rate is perfect, their respiratory rate's perfect, and they're breathing beautifully, their color's great, their tone is wonderful. So we published this study, we did it out of Elyria, a randomized controlled trial. I have to go out there because UH isn't ready to let babies have Kangaroo Care at birth. So you find the place. For my very first study, after I learned about Kangaroo Care, which I learned about by attending a child development workshop, because when I got my PhD in nursing, I got a double PhD, one in child development and psychology and one in nursing. The one in nursing was so new after only 2 programs in the country when I went into it in 1973. So I didn't know if anybody's going to recognize that. But so I went to child development, and a faculty member from the School of Nursing at Case Western Reserve came up to me. She saw me somewhere. She said, Susie, I want you to come and see a video I took of babies down in Bogota, Colombia, who are so well behaved. I said, great, let's take a look. And I looked at it, and the mother had her baby in Kangaroo Care, was rubbing before it like this. And my PhD dissertation had been, what are the effects of massage or rubbing massage on the newborn infant? Wanted them to be consoled. And all they did was pee and poop, which was very disconcerting to me because as soon as we started the study, within 3 minutes, every baby, as you start to rub them, would void or defecate. And then I had to change all the sheets in the crib, and that takes longer. And I thought this dissertation is going to take me forever. Okay. And after 4 babies of this, I go back to my advisor, who is Peggy Chin. She's a very famous neonatal nurse. And I said, Peggy, can't stand it anymore. All these babies do is pee and poop all the time. And no sooner do I get them all changed and I start the routine all over again and they pee and poop again. And I said, I'm spending all my time cleaning up pee and poop. And she said, Susan, how wonderful that is. Take the disaster and think the opposite about it. Make it a positive. Get it into a new brand. Think of what else it could be. And she said, you have an appointment with me in 2 days, and you're going to bring me the physiology of micturition and defecation. I want to know what it is. So I go, and we didn't have computers in that day when I got my PhD in 75. The big technological advancement was that when you wanted to make a copy, we didn't have copiers, we didn't have computers. You had to take your piece of paper and put a black copy paper here and then another piece of paper. But the big technological advancement was somebody came out with a piece of this carbon paper already attached to the back paper, so you only had to use that when you, and I had to rewrite my dissertation 13 times, because once you make a change, you have to start all over again. There's no such thing as computers. Oh, no, we didn't. And statisticians and statistical control, we didn't have anything like computers today. You had to take your data to a statistician and they puncture a whole lot of holes in a card and put it in a machine, and you came back 3 weeks later and they told you these were the results. I said, fine, no problem. I did pass the statistics part of the PhD exam. I said, this is wonderful. So my approach ever since has been send it to the statistician. But now you learn how to do it yourself. So now I send it to the doctoral students. And I have learned some of it too, but I'm not anywhere near as good as handing it to a statistician who punches holes. Anyway, so the technological advance wasn't there. We didn't have computers or any of that stuff. And so at this time, after rewriting dissertations, when we had a problem, then you really had to rewrite your grants and rewrite everything about it. But you take a positive look, and as Peggy Chin taught me, I came back 2 days later, and lo and behold, your urinary sphincter and your anal sphincter are in a constant state of contraction. And when an animal dies, you will see a release of urine because they're no longer able to maintain the contraction. So if the baby is able to urinate and defecate, he's relaxed. She said, Susie, this may be wonderful. Relaxation in a child is very important. So with your stroking, Ruth Diane Rice's stroking procedure that I learned, it was calming the babies so that they could defecate and urinate. And they also gained weight. So my PhD took on some new outcomes variables, so that all this changing of the beds wasn't to waste. Okay, but it becomes a positive thing. And that's where you get to find out what else has to be done. But the problems really do come from the clinical. We resolve the issue of our babies who had hyperthermia. We resolve the issue now of prone sleeping, that's changing everything. And now babies start right at birth. And yes, I want the nurses to adapt. We created Kathy Morgan, my neonatal nurse practitioner, who joined me on my team 21 years ago. She and I sat down and we wrote a new tool called the RAPPT, and it's already been copyrighted and it's in use in 38 hospitals in the United States and in many others in their electronic medical record that tech transfer samples. And I think the RAP is far more appropriate than the APGAR, but it'll take 100 years before that really makes the switch. And you know, when you look at the APGAR, there's absolutely no study on the APGAR. It has never been validated for reliability, for validity of any sort. It just was needed. So the RAP needs to be fully have psychometric confidence. So you find questions like, what is GAPS? I find them as I see what I see when I'm looking at my baby. And even today, you can walk in to any neonatal intensive care unit and you will see babies in their incubators. And not only that, you may see the mother there, but she's over on her bed watching TV. Not where her baby's brain is going to be the best, where his oxygen saturation is going to improve, where the rate of his infections is going to decrease substantially. And the ability for him to gain weight and feed better and get well, have fewer infections, everything is better. And in fact, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded a study for $20 million, along with who? That my friends and I created when we were working together in Italy. But they wanted to go to 5 different countries, Laos, Cambodia, South Africa, and Sweden up in Stockholm. So they put this all together and they used my doctoral student who had graduated from Case and is now the Associate Dean of Research at the University of Connecticut Stewart. She became their consultant because it was too much for me to do all that traveling with them. And they did a study that was published on May 21st, last year, 2021, in the New England Journal of Medicine. And the author is the World Health Organization. And it was a study, randomized controlled trial, because though I can't do them anymore, to say a premature baby or full term cannot have kangaroo care is unethical. So I don't even have a control group. But in this case, in these countries, premature babies were not being put immediately into kangaroo care at birth. And this was not being done here either. Prematures go to the intensive care unit, mommy comes to visit. This is a study immediately after birth, put them in kangaroo care and leave them there and treat them there on their mother's chest for 20 hours a day. And when mommy is not able to do it, the father has to be there to do it. They wanted to do 6,000 babies in these 5 different sites. They stopped the study at 4,035 babies because the mortality rate in the babies who were being treated in skin-to-skin contact starting immediately at birth. So all resuscitation was done here. Oh, that's easy. We did a study on neonatal intubation when I did it down in Colombia. We brought it back, published it here. Because we found when we had babies that we did our babies down there right at birth. We had to intubate some, and that was no problem. They loved it. The mothers didn't want to take the babies away once they had them on their chest. So they did everything on the chest. They stopped the study because there was 65% fewer mortalities with kangaroo care than there were in the other prematures. And the infection rate was less than 87% less in the kangaroo care. So they stopped the study because they said we can no longer do this ethically. They have 4,035 babies in New England Journal of Medicine, May 21st, 2021. It's phenomenal. I printed that out and I sent it to everybody, including the previous head of the NICU at Rainbow, who told me when I first came, you want to take a baby out of the incubator, take his clothes off him and put him on his mother's bare chest over my dead body. Well, he's dead now. But I sent him this and he sent me an email back. He said, congratulations, Susan. I see now I don't have to wait for long-term outcomes at age 21 because you already sent me the article that that's been done. You have accomplished what you wanted for kangaroo care, and I am now happy to support it. 21 years later.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
So you can move. You're each being studying in a special area. Claim your area of expertise and make sure in every publication you have one key word that is always the same. So everybody will pull up all of your papers when they look up that key word. And that's your area of expertise. And if you're starting with that and there's nothing else out there, you have to start with the beginning, the descriptive studies. What is heart rate, respiratory rate during 6 hours of kangaroo care? That was my first NIH study. And then we proceeded. We proceeded to look at a comparative, descriptive comparative, and then we had tremendous data. I went straight to the randomized control trials. And after you've been doing this and you stick to it and you don't change, one of our deans here said to me at one point, Susan, no, NIH doesn't want to fund kangaroo care anymore because we know it works. It works like breastfeeding does. It takes care of everything. So you need to reinvent yourself. So I spent 3 years looking and developing a team to talk about and study newborn obesity during the first year of life. We had fantastic data, good publication, got a good team together, sent it into NIH, and I walked down to our dean with my pink sheet, which is your evaluation, and it says, what is Susan Ludington doing in obesity?
Oh, my.
She is the Kangaroo Care expert. Therefore, this research team is very new.
Oh,
She
no.
doesn't have the experience to be asking for 4 million for an obesity grant. And why would she be doing this anyway? She has already taught us that Kangaroo Care improves weight gain. And if the mothers continue it through 6 months, those babies are not obese. But this study was about all the babies who were not getting Kangaroo Care. And we had found in our pilot work that I did with the an HMO that was around here, the Kaiser Permanente system. We found that by 4 months, you had markers that would show obesity in 5 years, 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years of age. And that happened within the first 4 months. And so we put this in for a grant. And we had one very special aspect of it that I emphasized for innovation, that we were, through the Kaiser system, able to get an adequate sample size, and I'm asking for 1,000 plus, of children who had not spent any time in the hospital. No broken bones, no illnesses. And so we would be giving it, developing a new obesity chart based on healthy full-term infants throughout the study. And the review came back and said, what good will that be? Most children get sick and need hospitalization. So they didn't want to invest in that. And they go down to the dean. I said, here's the review. What is Susan Ludington doing in obesity? And he said to me, I guess they don't want you to reinvent yourself.
Oh, wow.
It's your job then, Susan, to get your grants. And that my meeting with the dean was over. So it doesn't always go the way you expect. But remember this, you are creating knowledge that is very valuable and is now in a system where people can read forever.
Yeah.
And it really makes a difference to know that eventually policymakers can use it and say, oh, healthy term newborns will get Kangaroo Care. So I know that 362,000 or 365,000 newborns a year, not the 7% who are preterm, they all get Kangaroo Care immediately and for at least 2 hours. And that's a start. Now other people need to keep it moving and show the mothers that's too short, because you really can change their brains and everything. And we do have reports up to 21 years post preterm babies getting Kangaroo Care that show their cognitive abilities are far better than they are for the babies that didn't get Kangaroo Care. And as a nurse, you really make an impact. Your contact with patients can last their lifetime. This is the last thing I need to say. But I have memories. I don't have children of my own. Wasn't meant to be, but that's okay. I can help kids. But I certainly do remember the nurses in my life. Because in 1981, armed robbers entered my home and murdered my husband. And at the hospital, the doctors called me in to talk to me, and they told me all the symptoms he had. And I know he had bad symptoms because when I picked up his head, he was bleeding from every orifice. His eye was on the ground after being shot. And they said, he's decerebrate. There's no point to us to do any surgery. Don't you understand? He's decerebrate. And I said, yes, I understand that. You don't understand that this is my husband and I cannot forfeit any possibility of helping him. We have to try everything. I couldn't live with it myself if I said, don't do it. Take him to surgery, see if you can clean up his head, maybe he can be alive. He said, you are dreaming. I said, we have to try. For me, we have to try, and maybe for him. So they took him to surgery, and of course he didn't make it. He was dead within 15 minutes. But I was outside walking the hallway, and a nurse came to me on the ward. I don't know where she showed up from. She came to me and she said, I'm your so-and-so, and I noticed you walking back and forth. Will you share with me what's happening? I said, oh, yes, I will. My husband's in there, they say he's gonna die, and he's shot in the head by Aunt Roberts. And she took my hand and she said, may I walk with you? I said, please, I would love that. And she said, I want to talk to you while we walk. You made the best decision for yourself. That's very important, and for your husband. Because now you're trying everything. And we can hope that there's a miracle. Thank you. Hope that there's a miracle and he may make it. I'm here to hope with you. And she walked with me for another 10 solid minutes. I loved her. Her name was Angel. And actually Angela, I called her Angel. And the doctor came out and said, "You didn't make it." And she said, you did everything you could. She gave me a big hug. She said, now we have to find somebody who can take you home. And I said, oh, well, my parents, I notified them, they'll be coming. It takes 2 months to get here. She said, well, then we will wait. Come over to my unit because I need to be back on my unit. Up in the nurse's lounge, if you don't mind, the report room. And I never forgot. She would walk with me and say, we have hope. She gave me hope. And for the whole rest of my life, that's important. And that's our unique role of persons. That we care for the person, all the holistic person. And we're going to, as scientists, make sure that the best science. Put
Us today, just, I think such an inspiration for all of us. We're all teary-eyed about it. I think because you show us the power of nursing. And that sometimes it gets poo-pooed as soft stuff or maybe not significant. But the significance that you demonstrated for your research is just very inspiring to me, and I'm sure to all of the students too.
Thank you, and it's possible for all of us. We can
That's
really make our findings apply to everybody.
Yes,
There are many different avenues.
yes. Well, thank you so much.